Thank you, Claudia. Welcome to the Future of You panel discussion. I'm going to make this more of a fireside chat, like we're sitting in our living rooms. In the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the leading minds across business. We're so lucky that they're in my hot seat. And crucially, hear their recommendations for the future that will directly benefit you. Please welcome my panelists today. Louise Deverall-Smith, founder of DaisyChain, a platform connecting parents with flexible, family-friendly employers. Finally, DaisyChain aims to help parents find work that fits around childcare upon re-entering the labor market, as well as those in employment who are unhappy with its flexibility. And before setting up DaisyChain, Louise worked in recruitment for over 10 years. So she saw firsthand the lack of flexibility on offer for parents. Hello, Louise. Hi. Next on the panel is Robert Epstein, Windows Product Marketing Director in the Microsoft 365 product group. Now, Robert supports Microsoft's clients with something very vital, their management of Windows and the entire suite of Office applications. Robert is also a member of a team looking closely at hybrid work, experimenting with and communicating which tools are going to support this. Welcome, Robert.
Jimmy.
And completing our panel is David Sime, co-founder of Riiot Digital, I love that name, and a specialist in augmented reality and virtual reality. Now founded in 2020, Riiot, which by the way stands for Realities in Internet of Things, connects VR and AR with on-site sensor technology and big data, providing solutions for a whole host of industries, from oil and gas to logistics, medicine and education, much needed. Lovely to have you here, David.
Thank you.
Right, Louise, I'm going to put you in my hot seat first, all right? If I pressed you for 3 adjectives that describe the future UK workplace, what might they be and why?
So I think my number 1 would be progressive. Businesses really need to talk to their employees and find out what's working for them at the moment with this new way of working in a hybrid model, remote working, and to take that information and use it in a progressive way in how they can hire staff and attract more talent and retain their talent. My second thing would be about collaboration. We've had such a challenging time in the last 18 months, and that lack of face-to-face contact for people have found really, really challenging. So if businesses can fully embrace the technology that we have now, that we've all utilised to the fullest, I think they're the ones that are going to really succeed. And finally, I think businesses need to be really bold. So we've had such a challenging time, and it takes, leaders and businesses to make some real bold decisions and to be brave. And that, I think, will be important in the future workplace.
A good call to action. Be less risk averse. Maybe get a T-shirt with "Be Bold" on it. We should all be wearing that. Robert, I'm going to come to you. So this upsurge in tech that Louise mentions brings me very nicely to what you're doing at Microsoft. What has the last 18 months brought in terms of tech needs? And I'm sure Teams is going to get a mention here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just massively accelerated digital transformations across all companies. Satya Nadella, our CEO, talks about we've seen a year's worth of digital transformation every month.
Wow.
Talk about Teams. We've seen a growth from sort of 40 million users a month before the pandemic to way over 144 million now. It really is the way people are going to work, and the PC, I think, as John mentioned before, is the new office. But it's now starting to think, as we move maybe from remote work to hybrid work, what's the technology that's needed both within the office space and at home to get people doing that? Clearly all cloud-centric, and then also thinking about how we secure all of that.
Exactly. A former boss of mine used to say, WFH, working from hammock. And now it's just working from anywhere, right? So home or work is where you are, basically. Thanks, Robert. So David, VR and AR are just at the core of your business. I know you live, eat, and breathe this. I'm a big believer in augmented information, as I shared with Claudia earlier. This does build loyalty and retention amongst the end user, right? So could you maybe paint some vivid examples of what this looks like in reality? How will these tools that you're developing at Riiot Digital shape the everyday life of a worker?
Well, it depends on the industry, but in heavy industry, engineering and energy, we can use virtual reality and digital twins to transmit IoT sensor information from maybe offshore assets or distant assets to the user in virtual reality, to specialists who can then monitor and keep up to date whether anything's gone wrong, and then they can transmit that information to workers on site who can use augmented reality to be directed to make fixes straight away. In medicine, we are able to take 2D information from things like CAT scans and MRI scans and turn them into 3D holograms, real holograms, so that patients and surgeons can get the information that they need in a way that they can understand. And finally, in education, this is an important one. We've been making sure that on any device, school children and students can access 3D classrooms that they can learn from in a way that it works a bit better than the likes of Zoom and Teams. You know, it's better for learning because people are built to inhabit the world in 3 dimensions. So it means that their brain can be freed up to just go through the process of learning rather than having to translate stuff into.
I love that you point out that actually we as humans do actually process information in 3D. God forbid, we might be sat across from each other like we are now. And neuroscience research shows that you can absorb up to 4 times more when you learn it in an augmented way. So kudos on what you're doing. Louise, I'm going to come to you. So when we talk about the future of you, we can't ignore digital fluency. So just the ability to get under the hood of these services we're working with, just the management of tech so we stay relevant and we stay future ready. Are there any skills in particular you think that people need to have on their radar in a more next generation future workplace?
So I think innovation, leadership and complex problem solving would be my top 3. And when I say complex problem solving, it's definitely within a tech sphere. So people need to be able to read data, analyse data, and if businesses can see that there's anything missing with any of their employees, when it comes to this, they can easily tap into that and help them, give them some training, because we can easily learn these things.
Yeah, plug some gaps and then allow the human to work in sync so that one is not displacing the other. You just work in some sort of harmony, isn't it? David, what's your take on that?
I would agree with that entirely. I think that what modern technology allows us to do is to communicate and collaborate much better, and we have to communicate and collaborate much better in order to learn how to use these tools, as well as these tools help us to do that.
Well, exactly. And then it removes some of that fear that perhaps many have of the robots are coming. And speaking of fear, David, I'm going to stay with you. Should employees fear technological advancements in automation and AI? Are the robots taking over?
I have a more optimistic take on this from what I've seen. I'll give you an example. I wrote a paper on smart prosthetics that are basically robotic responsive arms and legs from limbs for people. We were looking into how virtual reality can be used to train people how to use these before they get equipped with them, which can be difficult. But what we also learned was that these devices have their own intelligence. So while the person is learning how to use the device is learning how to interact with the person. So they become a partnership and they work as a team to carry out everyday tasks. And this is what I'm increasingly seeing with AI and technology as it goes forward. We shouldn't see it as a them and us situation. It's an us together. And we can work together. You
can't get more personal than that. A prosthetic is in your body. It's the internet of bodies, as I say sometimes. And so absolutely, being in sync is even more vital there. So Robert, David talks of machines and humans collaborating. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, AI is here. It's in the tools that we're already using every day. Even the office applications are now absolutely taking advantage of cloud-based AI. And the point really is it's here to help people just do all of the commodity tasks. So in PowerPoint, you can have things, the slides made beautiful for you. It's helping with accessibility because we're able to provide closed captioning in real time on Teams meetings that people are taking advantage of. The reality is it's just a technology shift. In the 1950s, elevators all had operators in them, which we think of as crazy right now. Those people didn't end up completely out of work. They just needed to retrain, reskill, and it just allows us to sort of focus on not the commodity tasks, but the creative tasks, which is really what we're all about.
Yes, it's creating just as many jobs as it might displace, and in fact, perhaps the ones it creates allow folks to stay digitally fluent. And if you can do that, I think there is a place for most of us, fingers crossed. Robert, David spoke also of machines collaborating, but one question that does raise as well is where we're going in the future workplace with automation. And what is one thing you might say to folks that are still really skeptical of AI and do feel that it's going to do their job better than them? If you had 2 sentences, what might that be?
Well, I mean, clearly keep up with the skilling. There's an incredible opportunity to learn online with all this technology. Don't be frightened of it and actually figure out how you can use it to your advantage. Use the stuff that's already there today to make your job better and move yourself on to deliver more value, more innovation to your organisation.
Exactly. Excellent advice. Thank you. Louise, so at DaisyChain, are you seeing firsthand some of this trepidation? I'd imagine, for example, with parents who are a different demographic. Does it vary from generation to generation, do you think?
Yeah, I think it does, actually. I think the younger generations have been brought up with tech and social media. They're a lot more savvy. They know the positives, they know the negatives. People I work with, they are parents, so our age range is kind of 30 to 45, and we haven't really been brought up around so much tech, so we are slightly hesitant to fully embrace it. However, I think we have to. We've still got quite a few number of years left in the workplace, and so we have to embrace it. And like I said before, if employers can see there might be some slight gaps, just to give their staff some confidence on certain elements of tech, it's going to help everyone.
Yeah, it's just bolstering the confidence, isn't it? Exactly, because we're not all necessarily going to wake up speaking a digital language. I mean, a lot of 14-year-olds are doing that now, though, right? So they're conversing, and hence, suppose some of the fear is just not there by default. And Robert, expanding on what Louise has just said, are there any particular challenges you see businesses coming up against in this transition to the future workplace, and what effect that might have on an everyday worker?
Yeah, no, and I think they need to think through the technology that's needed everywhere. Yeah. So how do you ensure that meetings that are going to be hybrid are as effective for people who are working remotely as in the office? So investment in the office wherever it is, whether that be in your physical buildings or for people home, if the PC is the new office, make sure it's a good one. And then I think beyond that, it's actually cultural. It's how do organisations figure out what hybrid is? How do the leadership, talk about what the organisational norms are going to be now? What's acceptable? Our team has done a great thing where we do team meetings where everybody goes out on their mobile and does a walking meeting, and gets out and gets some fresh air. So it's that kind of thing, because from a cultural perspective, that's okay. And once everybody accepts that, so I think really thinking through the leadership and the culture and being very positive about the way you do that.
I love that. Next time we'll get them to film us as we're walking around the block. That would be really good viewing, wouldn't it? Robert, I want to stay with you as we start to wind down and get some final recommendations you have for anyone in a leadership capacity in the UK or otherwise, specifically that want to not just attract talent, but retain them and actually raise employee satisfaction and well-being.
Yeah, I think back to this issue of culture and leadership, over-communicate. When people are feeling remote, how do they stay connected to the mission of the organisation, what they're really trying to achieve? So again, use the tools to have more company meetings. You can do them digitally, and then obviously invest in the technology. Make sure you move to the cloud. Make sure you keep that secure so that people can work from anywhere. And then finally, it's skilling. Just ensure that all of your employees are taking advantage of the tech that they've got, able to get the best out of it, and that you're transitioning that to the workforce of the future. You're providing that mentoring and caring for people coming through.
Gotcha. Okay, over-communicate. There's no risk in that. I agree with you, by the way, because the message will land to the right people and maintain that culture, and then think about scaling up. David, your final thoughts, please.
I totally agree with Rob there. And Louise, we have the ability to no longer silo information into specific specialisms or departments or even companies. We're in an uncertain time. We should open up about that, and we should go, look, we don't know everything, and work together between companies, between departments, to help each other upskill, to help each other learn, because only the organisations that do that work together, are really going to survive this.
Okay, so a more relaxed and open ecosystem within companies themselves, actually bolstering each other. Why not? I wish we could get there. I think we will. Louise, I'm going to press you on your final thoughts. What's like an arousing call to action to business leaders for how to navigate this?
So I think, communication and trust is massive. It's so important. And I think employers could really kind of showcase their success stories within their own businesses, pick people from different levels within the business, on those people that are really successfully working flexibly, and there could be their fantastic case studies. And that will then mean that people trust them when going for interviews, for example, and know that they're a truly flexible employer. I think my second one would be they should broaden their recruitment, look at other avenues, have really heated discussions about, are we recruiting in the right places? Are we looking at places that can attract new talent? And then my last thing would be, invest in tech. It's got to work for everybody, and it's got to make people feel confident to be working remotely or flexibly.
I love that. I love that you speak in threes. I remember everything now. Also, I think on recruitment and broadening that's a very vital point. Research does show that human nature is we tend to hire more like us. That's just human nature. So maybe trying to break that cycle a bit of the neuroscience in there. We've got to work on this. Louise, thank you so much. I found this really energizing and authentic. It was like we were sitting in my living room, except we'd have about 10 cups of tea there. Right, it's clear to me that we have so much to be hopeful about. Please give a big hand to our panelists, Louise, Robert, and David.